once again, I'm going to kick this out to the patrons right away. No editing. This time, see, the last time...
What?
The patrons got it.
Okay.
I edited out pee break. Tiny
bladder.
Tiny tanks Gary here.
Tiny tanks.
I'd edit out. I'm not editing anything out. Literally, what we do, boom.
Pushed out. Patrons.
Pushed out to the patrons. Then I'll edit it out. I'll make it
fancy for
the public. But the patrons, they get that like behind the scenes look. That like raw, uncut, unfiltered feel.
I like it.
I think so. Yeah. So, all right. Low Expectations, episode number 9. Gary, good to see you.
Good to see you, Anthony.
What's up with your eye?
Dude, it blew up on Saturday.
What happened?
Like my eyeball, I woke up and it's
bright red. I know no one can see
like,
this.
And it's like one
red.
side.
Yeah.
Like it's only one side.
One side, bright red.
So we Google it and I have cancer. Because that's what happens, right? You get a WebMD and you got cancer. You know
what's crazy about that is everybody does that and everybody knows that they're going to come out the other side of Google with some crazy disease, and yet we still all do it.
Yeah, I didn't actually do that.
Oh, okay.
But
Did
yeah,
you go
I guess
to the doctor?
No. A doctor, they're just going to tell you you're sick. No, so it's like
give you the shot.
Give you a shot. It's a popped blood vessel.
Okay. How did you pop your blood vessel?
I must have sneezed or something. Like sneezed real hard or something, and my eye like took the brunt of it.
Maybe you were thinking.
Dude, it looks ridiculous. Like it's like rounded right around like, what is it? Your pupil? Like what's the part of your eye that has color in it?
Yes.
Cornea,
pupil.
No, the pupil is the black part.
I don't know, Gary. I'm like literally not the person to ask about this.
So anyway, it looks real terrible, but I think it's getting better. It's on the mend, as they say.
So did it look worse?
Yes. Saturday.
Several days ago?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. 2 days ago, it was real bad.
Because I
was embarrassed.
Yeah.
I went to church and nobody said anything to me. Everybody looked at me funny, but nobody said anything. I go to work.
Oh, and everyone's
like, "What happened to your eye? What's wrong with your eye? What's wrong with your eye? What happened to your eye?"
That's a great thing about cops.
They don't care.
If they can pick out something about you to just pick at,
some imperfection,
an imperfection.
Yes,
you need very thick skin.
You have to.
Do you remember when some of the guys we worked with, for whatever reason, I didn't even notice this about myself. Okay. This is something I didn't even notice about myself, but where my eyes meet at the bridge of my nose, I have like these little like indentations, like these little divots in there.
Right.
I never even noticed this about myself, but someone at work did. And I faced abuse for weeks about the divots in my eyes that could possibly shoot laser beams. And I was like, I never even noticed this about myself.
But now you see even more imperfections.
Yeah. Oh, now every time I look in the mirror, I'm like, what is that? That is weird. And then I start looking at other people's eyes and I'm like, yeah, they don't have that in their eyes. That is different, something different about me.
Right. You're unique, Anthony.
Yeah. We're all unique. We're all
uniquely created.
Uniquely created. Our identity is unique.
Yeah, man.
But binary.
That means like the fluid.
No, not fluid. Oh. Binary.
What's binary?
We're male and female, Gary. Male and female. There's not like this like
fluidness
where we just like go back and forth and decide what we want to be.
Yeah.
It's not how it works.
Huh. I heard that Venus, recently I heard that Venus, the planet.
Yes.
Is like a sister planet of ours.
Okay.
And apparently like 1 billion years ago, it had similar like living atmosphere that the Earth does, but then climate change hit it. And now it's like this unlivable, uninhabitable place.
Okay. So let me unpack this a little bit.
Yeah.
So they're saying Venus is how millions of years old or billions of years old?
They said 1 billion years ago, it was like a place that possibly could have had, like, it could have been habitable. Like somebody could have lived there.
So I'm a young Earth Christian. I believe in a young Earth. I believe that Genesis, when it talks about a day, is a 24-hour day.
Sure.
It's, that's what I believe.
Yeah.
So even if you don't believe that, even if you believe like old Earth,
Yeah.
and you believe that Venus is 1 billion years old and that this happened on
Climate change happened.
climate change happened on Venus, then wouldn't that kind of kill their argument here that it took that long for it to happen on Venus? So therefore, every 30 years when they say the planet's going to crash and
Right.
burn, wouldn't that kind of disprove that notion when they say that, if this happened?
Like, you're really thinking hard about this. I just thought it was funny that they think that.
No, but think about it. If they're saying 1 billion years ago, this happened on Venus, are they saying it didn't take 1 billion years to happen? They're just saying it happened 1 billion
Dude,
years
I
ago?
watched, it was clickbait, man. I looked at this quick thing and I laughed about it. I was like, oh man, climate change got Venus, man. We're next.
Maybe that's just my argumentative side. As soon as I hear something like that, I start thinking about arguments.
Do you
against it.
think I believe that?
No. I
Oh,
don't
okay.
think you believe that.
Because I don't believe that.
You just brought
Like,
it up.
I don't think people understand what 1 billion years is. Like, it's not even fathomable. Like, you
No.
can't comprehend what 1 billion years is.
No,
You can't comprehend what 1 million years is.
I can't even. I can't comprehend 1 billion anything. When someone says they're a billionaire,
You're like, all right, cool, man.
like, what do you even do with that much money?
Right.
Like, what do you even do with that much money? Like, I was just recently talking to a friend of mine who was in Montana and came across a very large ranch. Okay. And they were asking who owns this ranch. I mean, this ranch was like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of acres, like
maybe
stretched,
thousands?
Yes. Like,
Okay.
yes. Okay, let's change it. Thousands. Because I think he said they were on a road for 14 miles and it was like the same ranch.
Okay. Land
And
that this
they were
rancher owned.
told that a billionaire owned 10% of the property in Montana. Now,
Wow.
this is like coming third hand, fourth hand.
Sure.
But that just blew my mind. Okay, a billionaire owns 10% of Montana.
That's pretty cool.
Like that's like shut conversation down at a party type thing. Like a guy there,
I own 10% of Montana.
beating his chest about, I did this and I did that.
Yeah.
And then this guy's like, yeah, well, I own 10% of Montana, working towards 15.
Dude, that's awesome.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty wild. But I can't comprehend that. Like, what do you do with all that land? I don't.
Have horses?
I guess I don't know. It's wild to me.
Look at it, walk it.
I feel like there's a point when it comes to wealth. There's a point where you would get to a point where you're just like, what does this?
Well,
even
this
matter?
is why, like, there's apparently you can sign up for a seat on a space shuttle and you can go for like a 7-day trip in space in 2025 or something like that.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know
How
how
much
much
does
it
that
costs.
cost?
I don't know. It's got to be pretty expensive.
Who's doing this?
Was it
Elon.
SpaceX? Yeah, that's
Elon.
Yeah, Elon.
Yeah. Okay.
He's one of those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that guy is always spending a lot of money to do these things. So, but I guess if you're buying percentages of states, you're
Yeah.
you're
I wonder if
spending a
it's,
lot of money too.
I wonder if any of it's actually real anyway. Like,
Right.
if the money's even real, the land's not really real. Like, it's just
I don't know what you mean.
like
Not
nothing's
really
real. Like, it's just not real
Yeah.
at that
I don't-
point.
I mean, at that point,
I got real bills. I got a cell phone bill I got to pay for. So
I know. I did my budget today. I'm like, oh, geez. Went and got gas.
Oof.
And I'm like, when is this going to stop?
Yeah.
This is crazy.
Buy an electric car, then you don't have to buy gas.
I guess I could.
What are they, like
I don't know
70
what-
grand, right? For like a Tesla?
Yeah. But then what do you do? What's their life expectancy?
Oh, dude.
Because
why are you
doesn't-
asking me this?
Don't their batteries like die after a while? And then to replace
We
the
have to
battery, you might as
charge
well
them.
just, no, understand that. But like die.
Oh, like you have
Where
to
you have
replace
to
the batteries.
replace the battery, and to replace the battery is as much as replacing the car.
Yeah, that's getting
That's what I
fixed,
heard.
though. They're fixing that.
Everything's getting fixed.
Yeah, it's getting fixed.
It's all getting fixed. It's
Oh.
all getting fixed. There was something you said that made me think of something, and now I can't remember it. And that's super annoying to me when that happens.
You got to write it down. That's why I bring a notebook. So that way, if I have a thought,
but I
write
never
it down.
see you write anything in it.
Really?
I see you. This is what I see you doing. I see you flipping pages as you are doing now,
Right.
as we're doing these episodes. But I never see you write anything down, and I don't know that you're actually getting anything out of the notebook to give and present to our listeners.
No, because it's all in my brain.
Okay.
And I actually like, it's a leather, like, notebook holder. Field
I
notes
think you just-
cover. I
I
just
think
like
you
touching
just-
it, and it's like a comfort, like a fidget.
I think it's
kind
a
of thing.
power move a little bit. You roll into the studio, you set your gun down, you open your Celsius, you put your keys to your nice Mazda there, and then you take your nice leather
wallet and notepad. Yeah.
And you lay it down like you're really here to accomplish something.
And then we do accomplish stuff on this show.
We do. And then we open our mouths and people are like, what are you?
I think we're changing minds. We're bettering the world. We're getting rid of climate change.
Okay.
Let me ask you this. What do you think of this, like, Israel Hamas protests on colleges?
I think it's insane.
Do you think this is the 2020, 2024 thing?
I think it's part of it. I mean, here's the thing. Right now, as we're recording right now, there is horrific news breaking out of Charlotte, North Carolina, where I've seen reports that as many as 7 officers have been shot and multiple killed. And the news is super fresh. So, I don't know how accurate that is right now, but
yeah.
I mean, I that type of stuff is going on in the last like several days. There's been multiple officers shot. It just seems like the level of violence in this country just continues to ramp up as we go into the summer. And so
which was predicted here on the show.
It was predicted on the show. And so I think that Israel-Hamas thing, Israel-Palestine thing that you see happening on college campuses is all part of it. And there's already stories coming out that Antifa is jumping in on this. Because here's the thing. Antifa loves chaos. They love to come into these places where they're protesting something and they love to bring in their way of doing things and just create more chaos. That's what they want. So I think it's a bunch of kids on these campuses who literally have zero life experience, have no idea what they're protesting. And should they go over to Palestine and walk into Gaza, dressed the way they're dressed, identifying the way they're identifying,
acting how they're
acting, they would be getting chucked off buildings by Hamas.
Yeah.
And so to me, it makes zero sense. And it also, the whole idea that you are peacefully protesting is absolutely unequivocally not true. You cannot, I don't care, even if you are being extremely peaceful, you cannot go into a place and disrupt that for everyone else who is trying to learn there. So in other words, at these colleges, once you decide to shut down buildings and keep people out from going to classes and cause colleges to go to online classes and have colleges and universities decide they're not going to have their graduations, that's not a peaceful protest. You've now engaged way outside of your First Amendment rights, and you're engaging in criminal terrorist type activity. And then when you throw in there the threats being made to the faces of Jewish people that are there, Jewish students, like that's crime. You have a right to say whatever you want to say, but when you start physically threatening and assaulting people that you're making those threats to, I mean, I'm glad to see some of these agencies, Georgia State Police, they've been the poster child all week of how to handle it. Like those guys, man, they're laying people out. They're
Texas, right? Texas, they're going
carrying people out. Texas,
Austin, right?
Florida is hitting it pretty hard. So there's some of these agencies and some of these states that are hitting back at it pretty hard.
Which is good to see. That's actually kind of encouraging.
Yeah, it is encouraging. And that's the only way.
And I like to see that the colleges aren't like, just because it's loud and obnoxious and criminal, they're not succumbing to their demands, which is to disassociate with, I guess, what, Israeli companies or right? Companies who support
right. I have
the
seen
Jewish
some of
people
that.
Or Israel or whatever.
Yeah.
Like their demands are, stop doing business with these people. Well, I'm glad that the colleges aren't doing that at this point.
Right. And the thing is too, you can, the argument that we need to, protect the Palestinian people and they're being hurt and by the Israelis and, they have human rights and everything. Listen, I'm not here to say that the Israeli side is without sin, but the bottom line is Israel is completely surrounded by countries that hate them. Okay. And they have a right to defend themselves. And when you have a terrorist organization like Hamas coming into your country and raping and killing people, you have every right to respond to that. I have no problem responding to that. And there's also I think what's most concerning about this whole issue is that many of the people in Palestine, while they may not be part of Hamas, they will not denounce what Hamas is doing. I don't want to say that they're in favor of it, but many times when you talk to, I've seen interviews with people who are Palestinian, they won't denounce Hamas.
And I think they can't because they do, they're dead.
Well,
you know what I mean? And that's like a risk that some people aren't willing to take. And I can get that. They might totally be against what they're doing, but they're not going to talk against it because they don't want to lose.
But they'll go even a step further than not denouncing it. They'll have soft views toward Hamas and express those views.
Yeah.
And then if you saw videos of some of these Israelis that were taken captive and brought into Gaza, I mean, the whole city is exploding and cheering and following the Hamas fighters and celebrating it.
Yeah.
And so it's hard for me to understand that if for those people who say, well, Hamas is just a small terrorist organization, the Palestinian people don't support Hamas. Well, I mean, they may not actively support, but they are not denouncing, and they have a soft ideology towards them, or a soft, feeling towards them. I mean, Hamas is building, they have tunnels under hospitals. They're using schools, that's not a fairy tale. That is how they actually operate. And so to do that, you have to have a people that are willing to allow that. You can't,
or they've just dominated them, which is possible too.
That's also possible. But then why are you so upset with Israel for going in and trying to liberate them and clean it out and make it a better place for the Palestinians? And there's been interviews I've seen with Israeli, obviously every young person in Israel needs to fight in their military and serve in some way.
Right.
And I've seen interviews with some of the people that have done that. And when they operate on the edge of Gaza there, they help Palestinians that are injured. Like, there's a help there. And I don't really see that being reciprocated for the Israeli people the same way by Palestinians. If
if we can, I don't know. Why do we go down that route, dude?
I don't know.
I just think it's like the
current event.
Yeah, and the law enforcement aspect of it here in the States is interesting to me.
Right.
Election year, we've talked about this. Election year, it's wild. It's wild.
Yeah,
I'm glad we live in a place that it hasn't gotten steam.
Yeah, to me, it's just concerning when you have groups of people supporting. Not just supporting Palestinians, but supporting Hamas and other terrorist organizations and taking down American flags and raising Palestinian flags on these college campuses. I mean, that's not the type of country I want to live in. Like we should not be doing that.
Yeah, I saw a counter protest idea, which they got this huge screen.
Okay.
And then they played what happened, what was in October of 23 when the Hamas came into Israel, and they showed video of just what they did.
Yeah.
And just played it on loudspeakers and what Hamas was saying as like a counter. Yeah. As like a counter, like, hey, you guys are saying, really Israel's wrong. Here, this is the video.
Yeah.
And it's just on repeat. So they like rented out this area. They got permits or whatever, however they did it. It's pretty wild.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty cool. Like,
sorry, go ahead.
I'm done, dude. You're real rammy.
You got me rammy. I was tired when we started. But simplistically, when I look at it too, we talk about the law enforcement criminal thing where, criminals make their decisions. Law enforcement then is forced to respond to those decisions.
Right.
And then everyone judges that. The same is true here. Israel didn't go into Gaza or into Palestine.
It's just a little bit more complicated than that because Hamas claims or Palestinians claim that Israel's on their land. Like it's land that's been fought over for centuries. So it's like, but I'm with you. I'm just saying, like,
this incident that happened you said it was October. I think it was October, November, whenever, that incident that happened there, that incident specifically, the Hamas terrorist came into and attacked.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a little more unique because it's land that, I don't know, it's just been disputed for, since Bible times. I mean, it's been disputed
You're absolutely right.
And I'm getting in way, like, I know very little about that.
Right.
But you're right. There's a difference between, like, once borders are drawn, which, everybody agreed that these borders were drawn up, at least to some extent.
Right.
So, yeah. So I get it. But
yeah,
that wasn't on the agenda, dude.
That was not on the agenda. That's just
it's a hot take. Is that what they call that in the biz?
I guess.
A hot take.
I guess. But what we really want to talk about on this episode is kind of like a war. I mean, I think there's a war on cops right now, definitely on the street. I mean, like I said just a couple minutes ago, we're getting news out of North Carolina, but there's a war happening within the halls of some of these district attorney offices against the police. And so I think our desire on this episode is kind of to highlight two cases that we're aware of. There's many more, and talk about that, and then tie it into some exit interviews we saw coming out of Seattle, officers who are fleeing Seattle PD, and some of the exit interviews there. So,
yeah. And so when you say there's a war within the halls of district attorney's offices, is that, like, you're saying, like, within the justice system, the criminal justice system, which the prosecutors and enforcers of the law, that there's some battle between the two, or and city government, right?
In
or
some jurisdictions, in some counties.
Yep.
And a lot of this goes to George Soros, who is a billionaire.
Okay.
He's a billionaire.
Too much money. Got too much money. He's creating problems.
Yeah. So yeah, I kind of went down a rabbit trail when I was looking at some of these DAs. So it appears that George Soros has actively given money to 30 district attorneys that are in office right now. 30 extremely far left liberal district attorneys.
Only 30.
That's what I could find.
Okay.
And I didn't do a ton of research
to get them elected.
So like, in other words, Krasner.
But still, the people elected these district attorneys.
Correct. But George Soros is throwing a lot of money behind the campaigns.
Okay.
So money behind a campaign means more ads, better ads, a push. So for instance, Krasner in Philadelphia, George Soros gave him $1.5 million for an ad campaign.
Wow.
So, I mean, that buys premium airtime, top-notch videos and ads. Like, so there's something to be said for that.
Sure.
So, and George Soros, he's extremely progressive, extremely liberal.
Doesn't like cops, I would imagine.
Does not like, I mean, he basically, if you look into him at all, he has some training under like Marxist, communist type ideology professors and people. That's kind of his training. Interestingly enough, he's actually Jewish, but it appears that he has a disdain for the Jewish people. In fact, there's reports out of New York Post this past week that he's actually helping to fund these anti-Israel protests on college campuses right now.
Is this guy American?
He's American and Hungarian, I think. He has like dual citizenship.
Okay.
And so there's reports that because he's a billionaire, he has so much money into all these entities, and these entities are funneling money into these protests and riots on college campuses right now. Just an interesting fact about him. But the two district attorneys, well, I shouldn't say both the district attorneys we're going to talk about tonight, but the one in Alameda that we're going to talk about first, that is a George Soros funded district attorney in office there right now. Her name is Pamela Price.
Pamela Price. And where's Alameda again?
Alameda, California. Am I saying that wrong?
Dude, what do I know, man?
I think it's Alameda, or is it Alameda? I don't know. If you listen to us and you're in California, send me a nasty email. I like them. But this, do you want to break this one down? This happened back in this case. The officers involved in this case, this happened back in April of 2021. Okay.
It's a long time ago.
The officers' names are Eric McKinley, James Fisher, and Cameron Leahy. Or Leahy, I believe is how you say his last name.
All right, break it down for us.
You want me to break it down?
Yeah, man, you're good
All
at
right.
this.
So again, April 2021, Alameda PD, they get a call, 2 calls. One of the calls is about, hey, there's a man tweaking out. He's on drugs. It appears he's also drinking. It appears that maybe he stole the liquor containers he's drinking from because he's taking tags off of them. So you have possible theft. Another caller said he's hanging out outside her house, making my wife uncomfortable, and appears like he's tweaking on drugs. So an officer goes out. Initially, one officer makes contact with him. This suspect's making no sense. He won't answer any questions the officer's asking. He won't provide his name. He's evasive when asked questions. Appears that he's either under the influence of something or mental health issues. They're, looking at him, I would guess there's probably a little bit of both.
Yeah. How tall is he? Roughly.
I don't know.
How heavy is he?
Very heavy.
He's heavy set. He's probably 300 pounds.
Yeah. I think
he's big. He's
big.
Yeah. But he's not like super tall. So he's not like, when we say 300 pounds, he's not a linebacker.
Right.
He's a
out of shape.
He's an obese man.
Obese.
Yeah.
Very.
And he's in what probably his 20s, 30s. He looks like he's 40, but he's probably like 30.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I mean,
20s.
Rough looking. So these officers, I mean, I watched the body cam. They're extremely patient, extremely polite. They want to get his name and check him and leave. At one point, the officer's like, listen, I just need to get your name. You can't leave but until I get your name, and I'll check you for warrants, and then we'll be on our way. So he refuses to provide that. He's not cooperative. At one point they're giving him directions to keep his hands out of his pocket. He keeps plunging his hands in his pockets. They make the decision to arrest him, detain him. On body cam, it's not clear exactly what that's for. Possibly public intoxication, possibly failure to identify. Some states have a crime where if you are being investigated for a crime and you refuse to identify yourself, you can be arrested. So right away,
they put him in cuffs for their own safety.
Right.
His safety.
Because they've told him numerous times to keep his hands out of his pockets. He keeps putting them in his pockets. So whatever reason, they go to arrest him, detain him, and boom, right away he's resisting. He won't put his hands behind his back. He's doing the old chicken wing, pulling his hands as hard as he can.
Chicken wings is when you're pulling your arms up into your chest and kind of like your elbows are bent, your fists are up toward your shoulders.
In front of you,
and you're just holding tight. Which is a very strong position.
It's a super very strong. It's really hard to get.
Even if you're not a strong person, it's hard.
Yes.
It's hard to get someone out of that position.
Right. So again, I don't want to, dive too deep into, how the arrest happened and all the maybe you do all the intricacies of the arrest and the use of force, but ultimately he resists. The cops are, I think, above and beyond calm with him. They basically, in my opinion, dance with him way too long. There's he's in an up position. He's standing, the suspect's standing. They're both trying to get each officer has an arm because there's a second officer there now. They're both trying to wrestle his arms behind the back. And it's just like this dance, and they're just dancing.
Not good.
Not good. It's a terrible position to be in. I would, I thought, from a tactical consideration, the officers should have taken him to the ground a lot faster than they did.
Yep.
But regardless, they're calm the whole time. They're like, "Come on, just give us your hands."
They're not hitting in. They're not kneeing in.
Strikes.
There's nothing.
And in my opinion, they're too calm.
They're too calm.
They're too relaxed. They're just really trying to work hard to de-escalate.
Which is expelling their energy.
It's expelling their energy because they're working hard to get his arms behind his back. And it's also just increasing the dangerousness of the interaction, which is, why sometimes the best way to de-escalate is violence of action, 100%, get the person in custody. Anyways, finally go to the ground with him. 2 cops on top of him using full strength to try to get his hands behind his back. He's still fighting them. They finally get him in handcuffs, and they're kind of pinning him down because he's still kicking officers. He's trying to kick officers. They ask for a wrap. I've never used a wrap, but I guess it's some sort of tool that some departments are using that basically they can bring it and they wrap your legs so that you can't kick, and then basically can carry you to a car. It's some sort of restraint system. So officers are asking for a wrap while they keep him pinned to the ground. He's still fighting. And at one point, an officer says, maybe we should roll him to his side. Let's try to keep weight off his chest. But again, he was like, going back and forth, trying to kick them at one point. And he's at one point yelling. You can't tell what he's yelling. He's groaning. And in all honesty, it's a difficult video to watch because we have hindsight bias right now.
Yeah.
We know
What happens?
And what happens is the suspect ends up dying.
Yeah, he goes into cardiac arrest.
He goes into cardiac arrest while he's on the ground. And so when you hear him moaning and you hear him groaning and you hear him trying to say stuff and he's struggling, with hindsight bias, you can look back and be like, well, he was probably trying to breathe and let these officers know.
So the picture is he's on his belly, his
Right.
chest, but it's actually his belly probably because
Yeah.
he's such a huge man, like belly-wise. Like he's round.
Right.
So he's on his belly. His arms are behind his back, and he actually has cuffs on him at some point.
Yep.
And he's flailing around. You just got to roll him over. I mean, you just have to. In my opinion, you got to roll him.
Yeah, but I think they were slow to roll him because he was trying to kick him too.
For sure. So he winds up not being able to breathe. We know this because he goes into cardiac arrest. They eventually roll him over. They start performing CPR. They call for medics.
Right.
And he winds up passing away. He dies.
Yeah. And the reason it's a difficult video to watch is because you see a man uttering his last words, groaning. He's trying to talk. But again,
and the angles you're getting is that first person on the officer's chest. And you literally see like a hand, the guy's back. You see a knee every once in a while. So you're not seeing the picture.
Whole big picture.
Yeah.
And these officers, they're not like screaming at him. They're not cursing at him. They're not calling him names. They're not punching him. They're simply trying to control him till they get this wrap thing so they can wrap his legs and carry him basically to a cruiser. Now we know that he was dying. Like he was trying to breathe. That's what was probably why he was still fighting so much, because on his stomach, he was trying to breathe. These officers didn't know that. They thought they were still dealing with a resistant subject.
Yeah.
And that's how they're treating it. So they had no idea that he was dying. So anyways, this happens. Is there anything else you'd like to say about the incident?
No, that's about it.
So this happens. There's
super sad. I mean,
yeah. And watching the video, I would like, it bothered me. You're watching someone die. Like that should not bring you any level of joy or peace. Like it's not a comfortable thing to watch. But again, I know the end. So
they get an autopsy. The guy, obviously, it's an in custody death. Terrible for everybody involved, the family, everybody. It's terrible.
Yeah.
Autopsy. What's the autopsy result?
4 factors: methamphetamine, obesity, alcohol, and restraint by the police were all factors in it, with the main cause probably being the amount of methamphetamine in his system. That's what the autopsy found. So in April of 2021, there was an investigation, as there always is. Whenever there's an in-custody death, there's always an investigation into that in-custody death. Always a criminal investigation into an in-custody death. So those officers were, put on admin leave while that investigation was conducted. And the district attorney at that time in April 2021 in Alameda County did this investigation, cleared all the officers of wrongdoing.
Right.
Okay. Fast forward to January 2023. Okay. Pamela Price, this new DA, comes into office and she is promising the world to all the people who hate the police. She's backed by George Soros. And one of the things she does and promises during her
campaign,
thank you.
I'm here for you, buddy.
was tell the public and tell the voting public that she was going to create a public accountability unit. Okay. Public accountability unit basically means a unit to investigate cops. So she keeps her word. She comes in January 2023, creates this unit immediately. And she immediately opens up all these old investigations on cops who were engaged in on-duty incidents where people died, whether it was officer-involved shootings. She goes and opens all these investigations back up where these officers have been cleared, exonerated, no foul play, other DA cleared them. She now opens them all back up to investigate. And this was one of the cases.
Yep.
Okay. In addition to that, right before she dropped charges and what she charged these 3 officers with was involuntary manslaughter. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But when she dropped the charges for involuntary manslaughter on these, she is on the cusp of recall right now. And what that means is there's enough people in Alameda County, enough signatures in Alameda County to issue a recall on her and try to oust her from office. Okay. So on the cusp of that, boom, she drops these involuntary manslaughter charges on these officers. The other cases she opened up, listen to this. She's opened up officer involved shooting cases will be reviewed for one that happened in 2022, one that happened in 2021, another one that happened in 2021, one that happened in 2019, one that happened in 2008.
Wow.
And one that happened in 2007. And then in addition to this in custody death. So how do you not say that this district attorney is on a witch hunt against police officers when she reopens investigations that have been closed all the way back to 2007 to try to review these cases and possibly bring charges against officers? I mean, can you imagine that if you were the officer involved shooting in 2007, the stress of that, the investigation, you get through it, you're found, you're fully exonerated. It's found to be a good shoot,
A justifiable thing.
justifiable shoot. You're moving on with your career. 2007. And now what is that? 15, 16 years later?
Yeah. That's wild.
You're going to have the investigation reopened on you?
Yeah. I'm not super mad about that. Like, I think it's weird, but like, if you have the time and you have the resources, which is surprising that they have the resources, but to reopen it, look at it. I mean, why not make sure the cops do the right thing? My thing is this, is it going to be fair? And are you judging them on like how society looks at things now? Or are you know what I mean? Like there's so many facets of that.
I guess my pushback to that is we don't do this for any other criminal investigation. We don't
if it's closed, it's closed. Is that what you're saying?
Like if we have a case,
but if some other evidence comes up, you might reopen a case.
Okay.
But I don't think that's happening here. I'm just saying, like,
she took office in January 23 and immediately announced she was investigating these. So she doesn't have any new information.
Sure. What I'm saying is if officers didn't do anything wrong, like they shouldn't be scared. They're scared because she's on a witch hunt, which is what we're saying.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're right. Like, and these officers possibly weren't, I mean, regardless of whether or not you did, everything by the book or not, it's still an extremely stressful investigation.
Sure.
And to get through it and be found to be justified and facing nothing. And then to have a DA coming in who obviously has a extremely anti-police
bent,
is supported by a billionaire who has an extremely anti-police bent and who is making it clear that she's going to go after cops. Like, I mean, I have a huge problem with it.
Yeah.
You should not be looking at a case from 2007 and being like, I'm going to open that back up because someone died.
Right. When
it's been investigated and cleared.
Yep. I'm with you. I agree 100%. I'm just saying, like, yeah, I agree. It's wild. So these guys got charged, and it wasn't like on the cusp of like not being able to charge because of the time frame or something like that.
Yes. It was
like the day before it, like she wouldn't have been able because of the law.
Yeah, because of the statute of limitations or something like that. So yeah,
which is
she got it
crazy.
Right. And right before she's on the cusp of recall. Too.
Now, is she being recalled by those because she wasn't doing the things she said, or is this people just don't like her?
I think she's being recalled because the people of Alameda County are like, this district attorney is bonkers.
Okay.
She is not doing her job.
Not going after criminals.
I think people are not pleased with what she's doing. So many believe she did this as a power move to try to boost votes for herself from those that originally voted for her
Okay.
to get into office. It's like a political move. A lot of pundits are saying that it reeks of a political move to try to impress her constituents that voted for
So
her.
they'll come out and
So
vote
they'll come
for her
out
instead of
and try
this
to
thing
keep her
going
from
through.
getting recalled.
Yeah. That's interesting.
But anyway, she charged him with involuntary manslaughter. So I was curious about this, and I looked up involuntary manslaughter in California. And to bring it, a prosecutor has to establish the following factors: the defendant committed a crime or a lawful act in an unlawful manner. So the officers actually committed a crime or an actual lawful act in a criminal way. The officers committed the crime or act with criminal negligence, or the officers' acts caused the death of another person. So I'm looking at that. I'm like, well, it can't be number one. They weren't committing a crime. I don't know what they would say they were doing a lawful act in an unlawful manner. Couldn't be number three. The defendant's acts didn't cause the death. There was 4 factors that caused the death. So they can't say that the defendant's acts, the officer's acts caused the death. So you have to land at number 2, which is they committed the crime or act with criminal negligence. I'm like, okay, so now you go to criminal negligence. What does it involve? It involves more than ordinary carelessness, intention, or mistake of judgment. And I'm reading this right from California law. A person acts with criminal negligence when he or she acts in reckless way that creates a high risk of death or great bodily injury, and a reasonable person would have known that acting in that way would create such a risk.
Seems tough to prove
that. And I'm
that.
just like, how do you even remotely have that? There's no way these officers understood that this guy was dying. They thought he was still just fighting with them.
Right. Yeah. I don't know, man. So they're charged.
It says an involuntary manslaughter charge may also apply when a defendant fails to perform a legal duty owed to another, and this failure results in death. This requires a prosecutor to show that the defendant had a legal duty to the person who died. The defendant failed to perform that legal duty. The defendant's failure was criminally negligent, which we already talked about, and the defendant's failure caused the person to die. Again, it doesn't fit.
Whoa!
Hey, Gary, we got a sponsor.
Dude, everybody loves a sponsor.
Everybody loves a sponsor. Manny Luciano is a rep for Ethical Energy Solar. If you're interested in solar energy, you can contact him at 717-989-5841 or at manny.luciano@ethicalenergysolar.com.
Dude, everybody loves the sun.
Everybody loves the sun. You don't even have to love the trees to get solar. Solar can help everyone.
Yeah. Everybody loves the sun.
And here's the thing. Manny's a retired cop. He's a veteran. He's been a past guest on the OG podcast, Diakonos Cops Calling. He'll give you a professional presentation of what solar can do for you, how much money it can save you, and he will do it without the high pressure tactics. So tell him you heard this ad on Low Expectations, and you can even save more money. In addition to saving money on your power bills, increasing your home value, earning state and federal incentives, you can get 1 month off your bill if you tell them you heard this ad on Low Expectations podcast.
Dude, that's great. Saving money. Everybody likes to save money. Everybody likes the sun. Most people like trees. Like, we're good to go, man. This is a great thing.
Here's the thing. I know that CrossFit athletes and Travis the chimpanzee, if he was still with us, would think about going solar. So,
absolutely.
So should you.
Yeah.
So should you.
Hit up Manny.
Yeah, listen, there's no upfront cost. There's zero down to go solar with Manny at Ethical Energy Solar. You can call him at 717-989-5841 or email him at manny.luciano@ethicalenergysolar.com to see what solar can do for you. Tell him that you heard this ad on Low Expectations podcast, and you can even save more off your first month.
Whoa!
So that's the one case. Okay.
Yeah.
So did you have any more thoughts about that
I wonder,
case?
I mean, I guess it's going to go to a jury at some point.
Yeah, they've been charged. So
yeah, so there'll be a trial. That's wild. Were they still on the job, or were they?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think I did read that. I think one of them had left or is retired or left.
Okay.
Law enforcement. Another one I think works for another department, and one of the officers still works for Alameda PD. So
wild.
Yeah. Then the other case I wanted to talk about, another officer who's being charged. This is District of Columbia Officer Terrence Sutton, 13-year veteran, He was the Officer of the Year for DC in 2012. And this case occurred in October of 2020. This case came in front of my eyes because the Law Enforcement Legal Defense Fund is trying to help him out. Officer Terrence Sutton was convicted of second-degree murder in December of 2022.
Convicted.
Wow. He's
okay.
in prison right now. And so Law Enforcement Legal Defense Fund is trying to...
So I don't think he's in prison.
Correct.
I think that's
right.
Yeah,
Correct.
like everybody's up in arms because
he's not in prison.
He's been convicted.
Right now. You're
He's
right.
not in prison.
I misspoke. Yeah,
which is good.
Yeah, he's not in prison right now because the Law Enforcement Legal Defense Fund is really working hard to appeal his case. But this is the breakdown of what happened there. A known gang member.
This is DC, right?
This
DC
is
Metro.
DC Metro. Known gang member to Officer Sutton, and this known gang member had a lengthy criminal record. Officer Sutton had information that this gang member was beefing or was going to try to confront and engage with another member of a different gang in his area. So he saw this gang member on a moped on the sidewalk, not wearing a helmet. So he had multiple summary violations to stop this gang member and have a citizen contact, pat him down for weapons, do his job, do good proactive police work. So the suspect decides, I'm not going to stop for the police.
So he activates his lights and sirens.
He does not hit any mile per hour higher than 30 miles per hour because he's chasing a moped. Okay. That's the fastest they're going. Suspect drives his moped through an alley and blindly crosses a roadway.
Okay.
Gets hit by a civilian vehicle. At the time of the accident, Officer Sutton was going 21 miles per hour, was behind him. The civilian vehicle that hit this suspect and killed the suspect was a civilian vehicle. It was not a police car. Officer Sutton did not hit the suspect. He did not drive over the suspect. He had no contact with the suspect. The only thing he did was pursue the suspect, and this happened.
Do you know how long he pursued him?
I think it was only like 3 minutes or something like that. It was
short.
It was pretty short.
Yeah.
So one thing they found on the autopsy was multiple drugs in the suspect's system, high levels of THC, which is marijuana, and they charged Officer Sutton with murder, and he was convicted of second-degree murder for this.
DC Metro has a policy.
DC Metro has a policy
back then
that you may not pursue.
Right.
For I don't know if it was like a blanket you may not pursue, but definitely for a violation like this that you may not pursue. So
Officer Sutton definitely violated
it
policy.
Appears Officer Sutton violated policy. There's also the prosecution argued that he and a lieutenant conspired to cover it up.
Okay.
I didn't dive real far into this case, so I don't know where that came from.
Murder's the big thing. My
understanding of the case and what happened is that it was a huge, injustice to Officer Sutton because they charged him with murder. Because he basically violated policy.
Because he turned his lights and sirens on and a moped took off.
And because of that, and because he violated policy, which this is an important case because
super important.
If an officer can be charged with homicide, with murder for violating a policy is not law.
Correct.
Policy is not criminal law.
It might be fireable.
You can get you fired. You can lose your job. You can get suspended. A whole host of punishments can come down to you. But I don't recall ever seeing a case where they used the violation of policy to try and charge a guy criminally with murder.
Yeah.
So, all that to say, 2 cases that we wanted to highlight and just show what is going on with some of these DAs and some of these district attorneys' offices against the police and how it's affecting officers and their ability to do their job.
And so somebody might say, well, the officer shouldn't have chased that guy for, even if he is a gang member who is going to do bad things to someone else, he chased him, which caused his death. I don't think that's murder, but like that would be the argument, right? I think that would be
the argument.
The argument would be the officers did something which caused the criminal to do something else, which caused his death. Like there's like 4 things that have to happen in order for this this guy to get killed.
You're basically saying that an officer, while doing his job, is responsible for the response and actions of a criminal in response to him trying to do his job. Now, if he's breaking policy, again, there are ramifications for that, but you cannot say an officer is guilty of murdering someone when the person he allegedly murdered made a decision to flee law enforcement.
Right. This doesn't happen if the criminal abides by the law and stops when the police stop him.
Right.
It doesn't happen.
Right.
Wild times, Anthony.
I mean, it's a wild case.
Which is why it's important for officers to know where you live and where you work as an officer. You have to know the culture or climate of your department.
Right. And you have to know
not your department, the jurisdiction in which you live.
Right. And it's important you understand and abide by your policy so that you don't get jammed up. But when I say that, when I look at policy for the police department I used to work at and the police department I work at now, not in my wildest dreams. Well, first of all, I'm never looking to violate policy on purpose. But policy is a standard operating procedure.
Yeah.
A policy is not a law.
Right. It's file this paper. It's like in any other job, like put your hammer in over here when you're done using it.
Right.
Like that's the policy.
Right. And there's and within that policy, like pursuit policies, you take into consideration things like the crime that's been committed. You take into consideration time of day. You take into consideration the weather.
Most policies, like the pursuit policy, they make sense. I think they do make sense.
Yeah. You and I differ a little bit on where we're at with pursuit policy. I think where we're at in law enforcement with pursuit policy is a ridiculous position. I think it's absolutely ridiculous because every criminal out there knows that most of these departments will not pursue. So what do? They flee. Right. You're not solving the problem. You're making the problem worse. Okay.
But you might be saving a life. That's where I come from.
Correct. And you might be doing something to protect the public. The problem is that you are trying to protect the public, and trying to protect the public from a bad guy, you are emboldening him to do more bad things.
I agree.
In my opinion, it is not solving the problem.
I agree. It's not solving the problem. It's potentially protecting the public.
Yes, protecting the public. And I get that, but I think there has to be a balance there. And these policies are so difficult to follow because, so like in this case, yes, okay, you have the offense you have is a summary offense, but you have intelligence that this known gang member to you that you know by name and face is looking to get and possibly hurt or murder someone else, get into some sort of confrontation with another gang member. So I get it. What you have in that moment is just a summary violation, but there's more to it than that.
For sure.
There's more to it than that.
Sure. And I wonder if the officer's like, well, I'm not chasing a car. This is a moped.
Correct.
It's not, it's a fast foot pursuit.
Yeah. And that is, again, I don't know what Washington DC's
I'm sure it's laid out.
Pursuit policy
it's laid out.
But a lot of pursuit policies right now say, what is your speed? How heavy is traffic? How well do you know the area? What's the weather like? Are they blowing stop signs? Like, those types of things. But for me personally, if I get into a pursuit and it's with like a guy on on a bicycle or a moped, I'm probably am going to give that a little longer than I would a car that's going 90 miles per hour.
Yeah, something that's 2,000 pounds
Right.
and could really do some damage.
Because the other thing is a suspect in a car can actually hurt or kill someone else. A guy on a moped going 30 miles per hour is not going to hurt or kill anyone, most likely. Maybe a pedestrian, if he hits a pedestrian. But again, this was at night. There didn't look to be much pedestrian traffic. So again, if that's how his policy is in DC Metro, he's weighing, like he's within 3 minutes, he's weighing all this. Like, where am I? Where am I? Where am I? And then this guy gets killed and he gets charged with murder. I mean, that literally could happen to any officer in this country. That could, I just think about the fact that, I mean, I'm assuming he has a family, maybe kids. And again, right now he's not in prison. They're trying to appeal it and everything like that. But I just can't imagine that. Like a decorated 13-year veteran of a urban police department who knows the bad guys in his area.
Because he's a good cop.
And is pursuing one of those bad guys in hopes of keeping him from doing harm to someone else. That bad guy then dies and he's being charged with murder. I think it's absolutely a complete
miscarriage of justice.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's terrible.
It's terrible.
Yeah, I don't like it at all. I don't like it.
So,
and it makes officers like this is what causes officers to slow down, to not do their job, to look the other way, to just collect a paycheck, to just not go as hard after the bad guy as they once did, or they leave. They go to a smaller department. They find somewhere where they're not going to be engaged in the criminal element as much.
Right.
So their odds of getting charged for murder for chasing a moped,
right,
are their chances are better to not have to deal with that.
Yeah.
That's why guys are leaving. That's why guys don't want to do the profession. That's why people don't want to become cops, because you have DAs and government officials coming after the cops. They hate the cops.
Yeah, I think it's definitely one of the reasons. I think anytime you have a job where you know that you're not going to be supported when you do that job, you're not, who wants to do that? Who wants to sign up for a job going into an agency? Who wants to be a police officer going into an agency knowing that the people that are in charge of that agency, the leadership in that agency, and the district attorney won't back you up at all for when you do your job? Like it doesn't, they won't back you up. If you go to, Cookies with Rookies and Painting with the Police and all that, they're going to put you on social media and all that. But if you go out and you actually go after a bad guy and something bad happens because the bad guy made decisions to make it go bad,
right?
Who's going? And then these departments are like wringing their hands, like, we can't hire anybody. I don't understand. We're trying to give them $10,000 signing bonuses because money doesn't matter.
Right.
Money doesn't matter if there's no support. Who wants to sign up and like play Russian roulette with their freedom?
Yeah, and a cop, a person who's called to be a police officer, like in their makeup,
right?
They want to go after the bad guy. That's what they want. That's what makes police officers. So when you take that away from them, there's no more drive to go do that job. They don't want to go. What would you call it? Cookies with
rookies
and painting. Like, no, a police officer doesn't necessarily want to do that because in their makeup, in their very being, their person, they want to go after the bad guy. They want to protect the people who they're serving. Like, that's what they want to do.
Right.
And you're taking that away from them.
Right. Yeah.
By crushing them.
By not backing them up. I mean, I don't, it's one of the, when I look at the problem right now in law enforcement with trying to hire people, I honestly do not think it would be very hard to solve that problem.
I agree with you.
I think it would take more than just, one agent. You need leaders to back their guys up. You need agencies where the officers working in those agencies are like, if you work here, you do your job, you go after bad guys, like the supervisors here, the leadership here will back you up. The district attorney here will back you up. We put people in jail here. Like we don't
go after the bad guy.
We go after the bad guy, and we don't go after cops for doing their job. I think that could turn it around. I think that,
but but officers got to see it. Like it's going to take a while to earn their trust back because the trust is gone right now.
The trust,
I think.
Yeah.
It seems like the trust is gone. It's absolutely gone. Most police officers don't believe that they will be backed up by their agency, by the powers that be that can put them in jail or fire them or for doing their job.
And the other thing, the other sad thing, and the reason it's going to get worse is because all of your senior officers who understand how to do the job and understand, like, on the back end, the paperwork aspect of it and how to articulate and reason out why they did what they did, are fleeing, are leaving in droves because they're like, I'm out. I'm done with this. So you have a huge influx of really young officers who don't understand the job completely. I mean, even for myself, it took me 4 or 5 years till I felt comfortable on the street.
Yeah, for sure.
And you know, those young officers, there's a huge learning curve there. And when you have all your senior guys fleeing to not help them with that learning curve, I mean, that was the hugest thing for me when I got into the profession, is having more seasoned guys who understood the job and understood how to interact with the criminal element and articulate their reasonable suspicion, the probable cause, what was needed to have those interactions. That was huge in my career. And so that is being, like, those guys are fleeing the profession. They're either leaving completely or they're going to much smaller, much slower departments where they don't have to put up with the amount of craziness that is going on in urban departments.
Yep.
So
I think you said that well, Anthony.
So all this ties into an article out of mynorthwest.com. This was an article it basically about Seattle officers fleeing the department and their exit interviews. So just a couple quotes I pulled out of here, and we can talk about it. Like these DAs who are going after police officers and charging them with things like involuntary manslaughter and murder and those types of things drive to some of the things I saw in this article. The article starts out, it says, despite significant investments from Seattle to recruit and retain officers, the Seattle police force has reached the lowest staffing numbers in 70 years. Right now, there are 424 officers in Seattle.
424.
And 280 of them are eligible to retire based on age and tenure. In the last 5 years, the department has lost more than 700 officers, the bulk coming in the last 3 years. Last year, Seattle PD hired 62 officers while losing 96.
That's what we call in the business, Anthony, a staffing crisis.
Right. And this is across the country. This is just a microcosm of what's happening across the country.
We mostly see this, if I'm right, is in urban departments.
Yes.
It's not your local, smaller town, rural areas for the most part, right?
Yes. I mean, I think there's a staffing crisis across the country everywhere, but primarily the main crux of it is within your urban environments, your cities.
Yep. In
total, 73% of the obtained exit interviews cited city leadership as a reason for leaving. More than 80% cited staffing issues. So of all those officers leaving, the 700 officers in the last 5 years, 73% are saying it's city leadership as the main reason for leaving. Okay. That tells you a lot. Of more than a dozen Seattle PD exit interviews in 2023 acquired by My Northwest, 100% were of officers who served more than 5 years with the department. 100% more than 5 years on the department already. 82% were from officers who served 11 to 15 years. 73% from officers who served more than 15 years. And 64% came from officers who reached 20 or more years of service. What is the What is the most interesting stat in that? Were you listening to me?
Yeah, but that was real confusing because you said like 60s, 70s, 80s, but that's way more than 100%.
100% of the officers who served, who left, had more than 5 years. So 100%.
So young guy, yeah, okay.
100% of them had more than 5 years. So you didn't have people leaving with less than 5 years on.
Right.
Okay.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Right. 82%, 11 to 15 years, and then 73% served more than 15 years, which I think is the most interesting.
Yeah, because most departments have some type of retirement that's usually worth sticking it out. And it's usually 20 years or 55 or something
20,
like that.
55, 25. So very rarely, like when I got on the job,
No one left.
no one left at 15 years.
No way.
Or over 15 years. Like they were going to stick it out till, I think that's the most shocking. When you have 73% of those officers had 15 or more than 15 years, that's shocking. That means that is one of the most toxic places you could ever want to work. I don't know what their pension is. If it's 20 years, 25 years, probably 20. Most of the big cities you're 20, you're fully vested.
Yeah, I wouldn't think it's less than that.
So you're at less than 5 years to probably get fully vested, and you're like, I can't do this anymore. I'm out.
It's wild.
You're giving it up. You're giving up that pension. What factors had negative effect on morale in the department? Seattle police officers are nearly united in their responses, according to exit interviews filed in 2023. One officer said SPD's political posture and city management in all categories. One departing officer, a detective who's been with Seattle for more than 10 years, said in response, the morale and retention will never be achieved in the political climate of Seattle. Seattle PD is dying, and the command staff is along for the ride, watching it die. Quote, Mike Solon, president of the Seattle Police Guild, echoed the sentiments that the effects of CHOP are still felt today. We remember CHOP in Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
At the third anniversary of CHOP's closure, Solon stated city leaders at the time removed our ability to help people, and their political decisions killed people. They did. They literally killed people because there were 2 deaths in CHOP alongside multiple shootings in there. Quote, city officials' attitude towards officers, we were treated guilty first before any kind of review, another SPD officer wrote. Supervisors and chiefs not stepping up publicly to defend the officers until all the facts are in, thus creating the public attitude towards us. Betsy Smith, a 29-year police veteran and spokesperson for the National Police Association, said the last 3 years, 5 years, there has been constant vilification of law enforcement. Smith said in schools, on social media, families, churches, police officers are bad. Police are evil. The justice system is biased. Driving experienced officers away, you'll just lose institutional knowledge, which is just what we were talking about. This idea that these officers who have more than 15 years on have so much experience and so much to offer young guys, and they can't do it. They can't put up with the politics anymore and the leadership.
Well, and it seems like in these types of environments, the agencies and leaders don't want the older guys who know how to do the job because that's not what they want anymore. The missions change. You talk about this, the mission drift. So I think they don't want them, so they're happy to have them leave because then new guys come in, they can mold them to paint.
Yeah, but I think that's also part of the problem with hiring and retaining, because
cops want to be cops.
Well, I think the cops who want to be cops know they can't be cops. Sure. I think that's part of the problem. Cops who want to be cops know that in a lot of these agencies in urban environments, they can't be cops, that they will not be backed up. They will be, brought up for all kinds of crazy nuts with the civilian accountability boards of people who have no idea how to do the job.
They just want you to come to work, be visible. Don't create any
type
rock
of
the boat. Yeah, just don't kind rock of the boat. Chill out, make things kind of go away, just kind of.
Which adds to the firestorm of the problem, because so you have people who want to do the job, who really want to get after it, but they don't want to do it because they're not going to be backed up doing it. And then on the back end, you have a bunch of people who believe, and I think partially it's due to colleges that are teaching criminal justice. A lot of these colleges, it's academics who are teaching criminal justice. I know some colleges have actual police officers that are helping teach, but it's a lot of academia. It's a lot of like, this is what we need to do to change the profession. It's a lot of like social work push, helping people, doing this, services, all this and that. And then you marry that with what you see generally on social media from departments, which is all like this fuzzy, lovey-dovey, like everyone's out, we're doing this in the community. Everything is just so hunky-dory, and it's just, we just love the community. And these people that are like, I want to do this. I want to be part of the solution. I want to help people get into the job and quickly realize that, wait a second, this isn't social work. You mean you want me to go arrest that guy over there who's telling me to go, do things to my mother, and I have to go tell him that he's going to jail, that he's under arrest?
Okay, I see what you're saying. So you're pulling on.
So you're pulling people in who have no concept of what the job is really like.
I see what you're saying.
They get on and they're like, this isn't for me, and then they leave. I mean, how many people do you know over the last 5 years that you've seen that happen to? I'm not really I don't have that much interaction with guys on the street. Or detective. Detective Gary. It's
just a different job, man.
Yes. No, I get it. I have seen that. I've seen that with new hires. I've seen some of the new hires that are coming in, and I'm just like, why do you want to do this job? Like, what is your drive to do this job? And it's different than when I got hired. When I got hired, the group of officers I got hired with, they wanted to get after it. They wanted to go after bad guys.
Yeah.
That's what we wanted to do.
Cops and robbers.
We worked with supervisors who wanted us to go out and go after bad guys.
Yeah. If you were lazy, supervisor would be all over you.
Like, what are you doing out there? Like,
go stop a car, man.
Yes.
Yeah. Go stop a car.
Have a citizen contact. Are you walking? Are you walking
there's
your beat?
7. I've been told, I've heard this. There's 7 guys at this corner. It's a high drug corner. Why is nobody driving past there and told them to move along?
Yeah.
They don't belong there. They can't stand there.
And so like, and it was like that for several years after I got hired, more than several, probably 10, 15 years after I got hired. A lot of the people were coming on, the people that I was training, we'd pull up on a corner like that. And there'd be discussion. How do you deal with this? It's 2:00 in the morning. You have 7 guys hanging out in the corner.
It says no trespassing on this pizza shop. It's closed for the last 4 hours.
Even if it doesn't say that, how are you going to deal with it? Maybe we get out of our car and we hang out with them. We talk to them. Maybe we park down the block and wait till we can hear them and they're violating noise ordinance, and then we interact with them.
Yeah.
But now that's not what is wanted, because that like it creates a stir, like, and so, it's a different mindset now. Like some of these new officers that are coming on, I don't understand what they want to do. Like what their purpose is. Like it's like their purpose is to want to, just engage with the community. And I'm not saying that's bad. It's just that
it's not the primary mission.
The primary mission is to enforce the law. And I'm not talking silly law. I'm talking like get after like guys who are doing bad things. So if that's not what you want to do, that's not law enforcement. You want to be in social work. So I think that's part of the problem too, because you can't retain people because they think they're getting into something that they're really not getting into. And that is being driven by what they're being taught. That is being driven by social media. And that is being driven by soft, weak leaders who like that. And to the detriment of the citizens in these jurisdictions.
Well said, Anthony.
Here's a quote. While salary was seldom an issue, a quote from the same article, while salary was seldom an issue, according to the obtained exit interviews from 2023, Seattle police officers will soon vote to approve a new union contract. Listen to this. This is wild. The agreement, which can be seen here, would make the SPD, Seattle Police Department, one of the highest paid police forces in the region with a 23% retroactive raise.
What?
Yes. Listen to this. The 23% retroactive raise is made up of a 1.3 raise for 2021, a 6.4 raise for 2022. So these guys have been working without a contract, which isn't helpful, and a 15.3 raise for 2023 as back pay. So in other words,
Wow.
these guys have been working without a contract since 2021. They're going to go back and retroactively pay 23% salary bump for these officers, and you still have all of them leaving.
That's wild. So it's not about the money.
It's not about the money. And so when I see these departments saying, we're giving this bonus, I'm like, they don't care. Especially this generation. This generation wants to be supported. They want to know, hey, my boss has my back. When I do something, my boss is going to have my back. And I think, it's going to take a while for any jurisdiction where that isn't the case right now. It's going to take a while to get back to that, because you're going to have to earn the trust back of the people you serve. And that is, I think, the main thing that's missing is a lot of leaders in law enforcement, a lot of leaders in general, do not have a servant mindset. It is a survive mindset. It's not a servant mindset. And I think that if you can get a leader in these departments that, and this, I don't want to be a, negative Nelly here, but it's probably not going to happen, because you need guys who aren't afraid to lose their job, one after the other. That's what you need.
Yeah.
You need like a bullpen of guys. One guy gets in, he does the right thing. He pushes back. He says, no, I support my officers. No, they did the right thing. He gets pushed out by the mayor, by the political entity. Next guy up does the same thing. And until you have that servant mindset, and I'm not saying you support guys who do the wrong thing. That's absolutely not what I'm saying.
Right.
You hold guys accountable that do the wrong thing. But leaders who aren't in it to keep their job and get their paycheck.
Just get to retirement.
So
I can go get the next cush job.
Right. That you should not be a chief. If that's you, you should not be a chief. If that's you, you should not be a captain. You should go in. I've always said this. You should go into that position with your eyes wide open and understanding however your jurisdiction works. Maybe it means if you're a captain, you get demoted down to lieutenant. Maybe it means you get fired because you're appointed. If you're a chief, you get fired if you're appointed by the mayor or whatever. Go in and say, this is nice. I have a nice paycheck, but one day I'm going to lose my job. That's the mindset you should go into. Because if you're going in with the mindset, like, I'm going to do everything in my power to keep my job, you will not support your guys. Guarantee it. You have to go in and you have to say, one day I will lose my job. And if you're not willing to do that, then don't be chief. Don't be captain. That's my opinion. I think you go in.
I mean, you can push that down even further. Don't be a lieutenant. Don't be a guy who.
Don't be a sergeant.
Sergeant.
Yeah.
If you're not willing to back your guys up, that's all levels of this is leadership 101.
Exactly.
If your guys are doing the right thing, you always back them up.
But I don't understand. I've gone to leadership classes and I've gone to leadership schools, and I'm surrounded by these guys who are being taught this by some guy up front who claims that he's done it his whole
Probably
career.
a Navy SEAL, right? A former Navy SEAL, probably some guy that
a guy up front who's saying the same thing. Servant leadership, set expectations, praise guys. Don't look for what they're doing wrong. Look for what they're doing right. You're going to find out when they're doing something wrong. Like all these things, And I look around the room and I'm like, all these guys are hearing this stuff, but they're obviously not doing it.
Right.
Because these departments are losing people and hemorrhaging people left and right. Okay. And I get it. It gets harder as you go up. I understand. Like, I've never been high level,
Yeah, we're like two idiots. So it's not.
I've never been, a chief or a captain or a lieutenant for that matter. But, I guess I don't get it. Like, it doesn't mean you're not going to make mistakes.
Sure.
Like when I was a sergeant, there's definitely things I look back and I regret doing. I wish I would have done them differently. But generally, I'd like to think that my people who worked for me, not the slugs and the bugs, but those who worked for me enjoyed working for me. Okay. And if you did your job and you made a mistake, all right, let's figure it out. Let's like get it sorted out and everything. And for sure, hold you accountable. You got to hold people accountable, or you lower morale for the entire police department.
Totally.
But regardless, the idea of servant leadership is completely lost on so many of these chiefs, so many of these superintendents, so many of these high-ranking guys. They're I don't even think they know what the word servant means.
Yeah. And maybe we should do another episode where we talk about, because we're just Joes. We're just guys doing our thing. What would make us do our job better, and what keeps us like ground or nose to the ground. Is that what you call it? Like a hound dog, like going after the mission, like doing the right thing. Like what motivates us, or what motivates an officer to do.
Yeah. Oh man, we can't get into it right now.
Nah, man. Let's save it, dude.
All right.
We got to have there's got to be like a hook, right? We got to hook it in.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
but
I don't know. What's the encouragement? Sometimes I feel like when we do these episodes,
they're all negative.
Yeah. It's like we just talk about negative stuff. Are we negative? Is this a negative podcast?
I don't think so, dude. Cause like, maybe we are. Oh man.
No, I think we're just trying to bring light to those things that are affecting the profession, and in our small little way pushing back against it and motivating guys, because here's the thing, there's still work to be done.
Lots of work.
And
every day.
And there's officers out there every single day that are doing the job, that are doing it well, that are making solid arrests, that are making a difference for sure. And I think it's wrong to say, I'm going to give up. You know, I say that as a guy who is like, I'm done.
Who did it? Yeah. Who did give up?
I was
moved on.
Yeah. I was like, I'm at my limit.
Yep.
So yeah, everyone has a shelf life. I had a lieutenant that told me that everyone has a shelf life, but there's still guys out there.
And the shelf life can be lengthened, right? Is that the right way to say it?
Increased.
That's probably a better word for it. By having strong, good leaders who back you up. That's what we're saying. If you're a leader out there, what kind of word do we have for a leader out there? Positive, encouragement.
Be a servant.
Be a servant. Serve your guys.
If you're a leader,
how can they serve them?
The way I think you have to set clear expectations.
A frontline guy, a guy who's got like 7-8 cops under them, running the street.
Set clear expectations of what you expect.
Yep.
Define reality, because you're going to have to make decisions that they don't like, but just define the reality of it, and then serve them. Give them everything they need to perform their job well, back them up, help them, look for ways to encourage them. You serve them. Like you literally are the guy behind them, helping them do everything. If they have a question, answer their question. If you don't know the answer, say, I'll get the answer for you. Help your guys and gals do a good job and do the job well, and praise them for good work and notate it. Give them something for good work, like celebrate it. And yeah, I don't know. Serve them.
I like it.
Serve them.
I like it, dude. I'm trying to think if I could add to that. I think that was well said, Anthony. I'm sure we'll come up with more stuff at some point.
Sure. I'm sure.
And if you're a regular guy out there like me, keep going after the bad guy.
Yeah.
I think it's worth it. It's a calling that you've taken on.
Right.
And go after him. If we want to live in a society where there's peace, where there's some rest, some calmness, some finished aspect where you can breathe, you have to chase the bad guy.
Yeah.
The bad guy has to be held accountable. And you can only control, there's a guy, you got to control the controllables. Like there's certain things you can't control, but you can control going after the bad guy. And if you're doing the right thing, you got to trust. It's hard to trust the system right now, but I think you have to trust the system. Unless you're in a wild place that you can't trust it, then I would say go find somewhere else. Go find somewhere else.
Right.
And go after the bad guy. If that's your calling, if that's what you're after, go after the bad guy, keep going after him, because we want to all live in a society that's more peaceful than it is right now.
Right. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Dude, we're on your team. Go get the bad guy.
Yes, sir. I agree. I agree. Don't give up. It's easy to feel like you want to give up and throw in the towel. Do your work heartily as for the Lord rather than for men.
There you go.
What just popped in my head. So, and that's a tough verse for me. I will say, like, doing this podcast, looking at this stuff, I'm like, what's the point? Why am I even doing this?
Right.
Like why am I doing the podcast?
Sure.
Why am I still in law enforcement? Like, that's hard. And that's a convicting verse. Do your work heartily.
Yeah, I mean, we say like you had diakonos, was a cop's calling. You were
Right.
called to do this work,
Right.
and
Yeah.
and we're saying that this is a calling that's from the Creator Himself.
Correct.
You've been if you're on the job, or if you were on the job, like that's in your like it's who you are.
Right.
It's who you were made to be. It's where you find some type of fulfillment.
Right.
Not ultimate fulfillment, but it is some type of fulfillment, and the bad guy should be crushed.
Yeah.
That guy should be crushed.
Yeah. And I think there's, within what you just said there, Gary, there's hope. Like I think a lot of guys in the profession right now feel really hopeless. I think there's a lot of hopelessness within the profession, a lot of like just depression and anxiety. And a lot of it's driven by these things that we talked about tonight, lack of leadership.
Yep.
And
guys are going to booze, they're going to whatever.
Yeah.
To try to appease that
right
loneliness, that
right.
sadness, that hopelessness.
Right.
And that's not where you find it in an empty bottle for
right.
sure.
Right. Yeah. It's not. And I think that's like, if there's one thing Gary and I would just love to get across is that there is hope. It's found in the Word. It's found in the gospel of Jesus Christ. And if you're out there and you're listening to us and you are like, you're at that breaking point, like you're at that point where you're just like, I'm done. And you hear Gary and I talk about this and you're like, oh, there's weirdos, Bible thumpers, like whatever. But you're like, well, maybe they're onto something. Like, seriously, email me. If you know us personally, reach out to us. Like, we would definitely talk to you about the gospel. Like, it's not about what we feel, it's about what we know. Like, that's one thing that I've just been resonating with me lately. Like, I can really get wrapped up in how I feel, the things that are going on around me, but it's not about what I feel. What do I know? And what I know is that the Word of God is true, that the gospel of Jesus Christ it's salvation.
Yep, there's hope found in Christ.
Hope found in Christ.
Hit us up, man. We'll talk.